Putting the spotlight on Dayton Volleyball today, as we're really excited to sit down and talk with one of the assistant coaches, and Tim Balice. Tim, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Before we talk about the Flyers, I want to go back to your path to coaching, because I find it really interesting and sort of your time as a student athlete yourself at Western Michigan. Can you just sort of share your journey here to Dayton?
Yeah, it was convoluted, a lot of luck, right place, right time. I went to Western Michigan to play baseball and abruptly was released. I like to call that released, but I was cut. And saw a flyer for the club volleyball team in the third floor of our res hall. And a buddy of mine said, hey, why don't we go try out for the volleyball team? And both of us had zero experience. So thought that was a good idea and was really close to getting cut from that team as well on the first day. And lo and behold, the coaches that were helping that out were the varsity coaches for the women's team at Western. And I convinced them to let me kind of stay on the team as a practice player, if you will. And was on the B team to start with. And then I also, during that whole time, was trying out for the football team, the varsity football team at Western. Was released as well, So I stuck with volleyball that fall. Also played club baseball at Western. And then the following semester, the spring semester, I was able to stay on the football team and then was released again.
Oh my goodness.
That happened, so 3 total times I was released. And then the third time I got to come back for good. And but I played club. I was a part of the team and learned as much as I could about volleyball during that time and got obsessed with it. In Michigan, where I'm from, we didn't have high school boys volleyball, so we had it in gym. The really good athletes at our high school, the female athletes played volleyball, so it was a sport that I didn't respect because I didn't know a lot, but I knew that there were a lot of really athletic people that I knew that were playing it, but I didn't comprehend how tough it was to even be bad.
So you played a lot of sports in high school.
Yeah, yep.
Volleyball not being one.
Absolutely not, yeah.
But then at Western, you go on to do a lot of different things, because I know you mentioned baseball not working out, but were you involved in club baseball?
I was, yep.
So you're still playing all these sports while a Bronco. And I guess from that, and now coaching volleyball, do you take some of those experiences and other sports and use them with your time now with the Whistle here at Dayton?
For sure. I think that there's an appreciation, probably the biggest takeaway is an appreciation for the athletes that are truly learning a new skill, and the frustration that can come with that, the confusion. So I think there's a little bit of patience with that I've learned, because I've been in that 18-year-old's body trying to figure out something completely new. And regardless of the skill level that we have of the athletes that come in here, we're all trying to get them to do new things. I've adopted quite a bit of patience in that regard. I've also, I do have a soft spot in my heart for the kids that just do it hard and the right way. I think all coaches truly do. But there's definitely an awareness of that even through the recruiting process of kind of trying to separate the wheat from the chaff of the kids who are obsessed about the sport and want to be great versus the ones that enjoy it. So it's also helped in the recruiting process as well.
So you play a couple years of varsity football at Western Michigan.
Yep.
And then
technically I was on the team for all 4 years. Technically. I guess 5.
What was your position?
So I caught kind of through the grapevine that they only had one punter on the team that fall semester. And Jim Laney was his name. He's actually from Ohio. Amazing human being. And I found out that no one else on the team had punting background. So I kind of cornered the head coach and I said, hey, I can punt. You guys need a backup punter. So that's how I got on the team as a punter, and worked my way into some scout team wide receiver stuff. Owned that as much as I could while punting, learned how to onside kick and hold. And then I was really lucky my junior year was on some special teams. So kickoff, only got to punt like twice in a game, which is cool.
Both inside the 20.
Yes, yeah, it was horrible. Oh yeah, it was in the wind. Yeah, that was the strongest wind. Yeah.
Well, what an experience, and I guess a lot of experiences from doing just so many things as a Bronco. You stay in Western Michigan after graduation.
Yep.
And then you get an opportunity to coach?
Yeah, it was happenstance. I was starting my master's at Michigan State in public health, and that was a dual degree program where I was conditionally accepted to the medical school. So I would do my master's and then start medical school after that. Another kicker that was on our team, who was he was maybe 3 years older than me, got accepted to University of Michigan's med school, and he told me about this thing you can defer. So once you get accepted, you can kind of live like you're dying and travel, you can do your master's. So I deferred that first year that I could, and that's when I got into coaching volleyball, actually through another teammate, Thomas Peregrine. His mom, he was a transfer quarterback, whose mom worked for Molten, which is like the biggest volleyball company in the world in regards to the ball that we use. And he was helping out a JV team, and he said, hey, you played Club Timmy, I need you to help me. This is part of my exercise science internship. Knew no rules. And helped out there, and did that for a year and a half, and then had a mentor who convinced me to come help out at the 2-year institution that was local there. And hey, there's been a coaching change. I'm the head coach. I want you to go be the assistant. And then in a year, I was a head coach there, way before I was ready. But yeah.
From this entire path to volleyball, picking up a flyer at the residence hall to then coaching club, was it just like continuing to sort of walk down the road and just fall in love with something? Because I feel like it's so unique in that like you didn't have any experience like from high school to then here you are like after you graduate college to actually teaching the game.
Yeah.
So do you still sort of find yourself in sort of that love affair with volleyball?
For sure. It was, and coaching specifically was this profession that I was aware of as an athlete. So I knew that I had coaches that was their livelihood, collegiately, high school wise. I didn't comprehend the impact that they could have. I was living it, but until kind of getting out of college, I realized like, whoa, this is a great way to impact in a competitive realm, which I'm very competitive, impact young individuals, young adults. And yeah, it's something that the sport itself I'm obsessed with. The profession itself is truly a calling for me. I know it's like super cliche. I also like run towards stuff that I'm really bad at. Especially if someone tells me I can't do it, and that is just kind of the perfect storm of what volleyball and coaching was. After that junior college gig, I think I applied to like 30-something Division I assistant gigs, and I didn't get like a call back. I got a couple emails back, and I was like, man, there's no way I can get into this to that level. And Coach Horsman was coming back to Dayton, so this was 2013, and just out of happenstance, I interviewed right before that when he was at Maryland. Didn't get the job, and that was very late after I sent all those 30-something applications. And so when he came to Dayton, I knew that I didn't know much about Dayton except for Dayton basketball, but everyone that I respected in the volleyball world said Dayton is a volleyball powerhouse. They support volleyball. The community loves volleyball. And of course, you don't get it till you get here. But that's when I made the move here to be the volunteer assistant in 2013, 2014.
And you take on that role for a hot minute, and then you find yourself over at Urbana.
Yep.
In a head coaching role. And with that stop, you return here to Dayton. How impactful was that though, in those years to where you finally make that step into solid college coaching?
Yeah.
And how much did you learn during that period?
It was, and I'm grateful that I kept some notes during the whirlwind of that transition. And although I was a quote-unquote head coach at at Kalamazoo Valley Community College, that 2-year institution, I didn't know up from down. And I'm not going to, stand here and say that I do now, but I know a little bit more. That first head coaching gig where there's a salary and obviously there's pressure, it adds a different frame for everything. And it was just really interesting to go through that transition of when you truly talk about recruiting a certain type of kid or coaching to a certain culture. That's where the rubber hits the road when you're in the hot seat, so to speak. And I've always had respect for Coach Horsman and the difficult decisions that he has to make every day, and in perspective. But I had way more perspective coming back after being in some really tough conversations, even stuff as an assistant coach you don't even think about, whether it be budget or even at an administrative level, at the institutional level, just stuff that you kind of stay in your own little world. So yeah, it was a great experience. As always, a lot of coaching is learning on the fly, and a lot of times doing it wrong, and you hope that you don't do it so wrong that it's in an impactful way, but hopefully you can do it right the next time, whatever that situation is. So yeah, a lot of experience points.
And then now back with Dayton, you've been here now for a good while, and talk a little bit about how things have changed in just that quick period where you weren't, and I guess the game in general, because I feel like it's always changing, especially in looking at this year with a couple of the rule changes. Is it always sort of that moment to where, even though you might be in like a teaching role, that you're sort of a student and just continuing to learn?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, and just to the rule changes, I think what's been really unique, and when I made the decision, and I concretely remember I was at the annual coaches convention in Louisville, and this was in 2010, when I was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go full bore at this. I started to realize that all this information was accessible, and maybe in football or maybe in some of the other sports I'd been around, you have to be in the right coaching tree. You have to be around the right people, and of course that is still the case in all sports and all situations. But volleyball was this open source. For me, I was like, okay, if I just put in the legwork, I can figure these things out, whether it be the rules or the rule changes, the tactics, the strategies, all that jazz. And even since then, from now, the rule changes in regards to challenge review, has helped our sport immensely. How many, the roster size now, which is a new change through NCAA, that's how you build your roster, right? There's been the addition of 2 liberos, which is pretty gnarly. They had that in club, and I coached club for about 9 years. They had that common in club for quite a while, but now they're bringing it to NCAA volleyball. So yeah, there's a lot of nuances, and it's a lot of stuff that as especially younger coach, I didn't appreciate that there was dynamic rules changing quite often. So you have to stay locked in if you want to have any competitive advantage. But yeah, it's been interesting just in the rule changes, and then obviously the changes within the program. What I've always really valued about Dayton in general as an institution and all the athletics is the expectation and the support. In volleyball, that core value is legacy. It kind of comprises everything. So those that were before, those that were after, it really is the culture. And it was really neat to come back and, several years later and still see that there's a huge expectation in all the things that really mattered most, 3 years ago. And even to go back and meeting alumni that played for coach the first time around when he was at Dayton. Things that have stood the test of time. And I'm not going to use the word traditions, but more like expectations, standards that still are in place. And what's also cool, Coach has been very dynamic in the things that he has prioritized. He's made changes, and I think the biggest thing is allowing the players to be involved in a lot of those standards. And I think there was a time where athletes were locked in, and you say the sky is blue, the grass is green, cool, or vice versa, got it. I think he's done a great job of involving the athletes in the why and letting them be involved with those standards, and that's always been consistent. That's never changed. But I think the degree of the athletes' involvement has been really cool.
One thing I've always thought is neat is sort of like the family aspect of it. Like you come to a game, you're going to see some familiar faces from past years. Somebody comes in, the fans, know that person and, are happy to see them. And, from going to sort of this Flyers team, and then also some of the Flyers teams of the past, another thing that I'm so fascinated, and I'm still learning the sport, is momentum, and just how that can shift so quickly. And there have been so many players that can sort of get on a roll and on a run and almost get in the zone. For you, watching it from the sideline as a coach, I know you're always hoping that that's your player out there. Do you continue to go to that person in those moments? And then I guess on the flip side, if it's not your player and it's on the other side of the net, how do you look to maybe stop somebody that's in the zone?
Yeah, that's tough. There's an art to that, and I think the relationship that you have with your team and the awareness you have of the players, I think, is the best way to navigate that. Hopefully your training does the legwork. So, if someone is hot and they're on a roll, whether it's offensively or serving, yeah, you want to run with it. You want to take advantage of that, because to your point, momentum is by far the most important thing that we have in our sport that is tangible in other things, maybe statistics or runs of points, but it is so integral to the success of a team. So yeah, I think we try to ride it out as long as we can, and those that are hot, we just got to make it uncomfortable. I think when we talk about the opponents, the biggest thing is make them do something different. Make it more difficult, whatever that is.
What's your favorite thing about this sport? In volleyball, especially, I'm interested because you kind of sort of come into it late, and not growing up
for sure
with the sport.
I think the appreciation for the combination of the athleticism, the jumping, the hitting, the speed, for sure the speed, but then also the technical side. The nuances of the passing and the setting, and especially the skills, I'd liken it to golf. The minutia of everything. And it doesn't need to be that complex. As coaches, we get really good at making things complex, but they are in the sense of how many things are involved. And I think the appreciation of having some of the best athletes, I think, in the country doing some of the most difficult things in sport it's awesome. It's a rebound sport, so the only time you can hold is when you're serving. And I've seen and played next to NFL athletes, not next to. I've been on the sideline while they've been playing. Actually, I did get lit up by a couple guys that played for the Lions. I got to give them some props. But at any rate, to see great athletes do really tough things firsthand and then be involved with that journey is, it's a drug. It's addictive, and that's just the volleyball part. Way cooler now that since I've been doing this long enough to see how the values that you hopefully reinforce, the standards you hopefully reinforce, transition into their life after sport, because those are really, really obviously why we're doing this. A younger me didn't appreciate that. I think as an athlete I loved it because I mean obviously there's a lot of intangibles that I was able to cultivate being an athlete, but I didn't appreciate it until now. So I'd say the combination of those two things, the athleticism, the ability to be and doing something very technically difficult, but then also the life lessons piece. Yeah, it's a 2 for 1.
That second part, the life lessons piece, is that the biggest satisfaction that you get from coaching? For sure.
And I think, again, the longer you do it, you get to see the benefits that these athletes have when they come back for alumni weekend, or you get to go to their wedding, or they're landing their dream job that they told you on your first recruiting call, like, hey, I want to do this. Cool, let's make that happen. And when they get that job or find that passion or whatever, it's really cool. And it kind of reminds me of that pursuit. Kind of gives me a glimpse back into the tough times and everything you had to do to kind of overcome. But again, just kind of being a spectator and hopefully helping make that pathway a little bit easier is by far the coolest thing that we get to do. It's a lot of responsibility, though.
I know it's sort of tough to define a team as the season's going on, because I think sometimes that final statement's made at the end of the year.
Sure.
But with this year's team, what's something that you really, really like about them and feel that, sort of describes them as a collective unit?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Probably the last 4 or 5 practices, I think as a staff, we've talked about this. We've discussed this with the group, and then even after our exhibition with Kentucky, finding out what our identity is as a unit is something that we're still trying to figure out. I think if we're going to look at the individual pieces, I think we have some really, really bright volleyball players that love the game and love each other. I think we have some great athletes that are very experienced. I also think we have the between the ears and the between the shoulders, so the brain to go far. And I also think that we, as a unit, want to be great. And I think I've been around, not necessarily at Dayton, but elite athletes that might be missing one of those components. So I think as we see and get tested, that identity is going to be revealed. But there's a whole lot of potential. It's a scary word as a coach, because it, in the words of Coach Horsman and probably other coaches, it means you haven't done anything yet. So yeah, this group is it's a fun group. We don't have any knuckleheads. They work hard. They're good kids. They want to be great, which makes our job easier. But I think that identity is something that we're still trying to figure out. We're talented, but I think we'll find out pretty soon.
Well, we're really excited to watch your group and to see what their journey ends up being. The next time we do something like this, we're going to get you on the football field.
Oh gosh, no.
We'll have you hit a couple punts. Tim, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
For more anything Dayton Flyers, you can go online, DaytonFlyers.com. Also, you can follow us on social media at Dayton Flyers.